I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for everyone taking the time to be here. I know you guys are all super busy. I promise to add value in today's conversation. Uh, let's just dive right into it. So today we're going to be talking about brand building specifically, and really what my objective here today is to give you something tangible, some tactic or strategy that you can take and implement in your organization immediately after this webinar. There's going to be a little bit of theory at the beginning, but I'll try to do my best to add a little bit more specific context to it. First and foremost, we're going to talk about owned and earned media and how you can leverage that to build your brand's online presence. Then we're going to talk about creating an effective content strategy. I know a lot of people have tried implementing a content strategy in the past, and maybe it didn't get the results that they were looking for. And we're going to discuss why that might be and kind of give a framework that you can use to develop your strategies moving forward, regardless of budget or industry. It's ubiquitous, I swear, I promise. Next, we're going to talk about content promotion. I think that's something that is really undervalued. We put a lot of emphasis on creating the content, but we don't really talk too much about how do we promote that across all of our key channels. Next, we're going to talk about building a niche-focused email list. Regardless of what the data says or what blog post headlines you've read, your email list is the most important ROI generating resource that you can provide, because it's building a targeted audience of constituents that care about what you do and are invested in your success. And then we're going to talk about how do you track and measure that progress online through digital channels and making slight tweaks and adjustments to optimize your campaigns to really get that result that you're looking for. So this is a study that was done by HubSpot. I believe it's 2017, the data here. They do have a 2018 release, I believe. But it's really talking about some of the top marketing challenges that marketers across the globe are facing. Number one, coming in at nearly 60% is generating traffic and leads. Number two, proving ROI in your investments, and then securing a budget. We're going to really focus on 1 and 2 here today in just building that audience up and figuring out how do we connect with people and provide value to them. But 3 is something I think I've had discussions in the past with some executive directors and CEOs of other nonprofit organizations. And what I found is through that conversation that fear of and loss of investment tends to be an issue that a lot of people face when trying to get that budget for those initiatives. So let's focus on growing your brand's online presence. So this is data that's been collected and self-reported through GuideStar and then SimilarWeb. SimilarWeb is a data analytics platform that tracks all sorts of web traffic and how it's being referred to your website. And what's really interesting is obviously Facebook is a powerhouse, and this data is specifically looking at nonprofit websites. It's collected, I believe, about 1,000 organizations and then spread across different types of staff size and industry. So Facebook is obviously the powerhouse generating a lot of the traffic, but overall social as a total contribution to traffic that's being referred to your websites only represents about 7%, where search is dominating, really 47%. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. People want to see that you have a presence online, that you're legitimate, and that you're providing current information for the communities you serve. And of course, I like to back everything that I do with an independent and verifiable source so that it's not just me trying to blow smoke up anyone's behind, I guess. So this is data collected from JumpShot. It's another data analytics firm. They specifically look at traffic as it relates to being referred to your website. And as we can see in this graphic here, a lot of it is being dominated by Google. Google Web Search obviously is a big one, coming in at about 62%. And then interestingly enough, the second largest search engine in the world, YouTube. So really just kind of figuring out, why is it important? These brand mentions are really important. And I think a really apt example of that is the Ice Bucket Challenge. 4 years ago, it really wasn't a thing. It wasn't in anyone's mindset. But today, looking back on it, it's an internationally known phenomenon. It generates over 40,000 monthly search volume per month. And over time, the campaign has raised over $210 million internationally, and it will forever be synonymous with ALS. That's something that no amount of advertising spend or no amount of content can really generate. So really making sure that you're positioning with purpose in your brand online is important, because something like that can happen. And all it really takes is posting the challenge online and getting one influencer in that space to latch onto it and share it within their community, and then it just spreads like wildfire. It's something that the internet does very well, and it's a very unique phenomena. And then, of course, getting to the core of this section is owned and earned media. As you can see in this graph, there's a lot that you can do in the marketing space. And it's easy to see how one can get overwhelmed with all of the different things that you should be doing and investing in all of these social platforms and your blog and your website. And where do you even start? Well, kind of taking the conversation back to the data that we were talking about earlier with JumpShot and how people are searching online, I really, really believe that focusing on owned media, which is assets that you have complete control over, it's your blog, it's your website, it's your email, and then positioning that to gain to your earned media, which are kind of like, think of it as your digital word of mouth marketing. It's any type of brand mention. Maybe someone mentions you in a tweet or on Facebook or in a form. In the context of SEO, which is what I'm kind of a big nerd when it comes to SEO, a link on someone else's site referencing back to your site is one of the ultimate forms of earned media, because that site is confirming to their audience that this is someone of value. We're willing to put ourselves on the line for that person by contributing that information, and we believe it has value. So, kind of in that context, I think owned and earned media are some of the best ways to build a brand online. Of course, distributing all of your content across social posts, and we'll touch upon how to do that in a little bit, is something that you should be doing. And then, of course, advertising is really important as well if you can integrate that into all of the other campaigns that you're doing. But again, don't overwhelm yourself. Take it one step at a time. Focus on trying to create, let's say, a weekly blog post or maybe a weekly video, and then kind of build up from there. See what you're comfortable with, see where your resources lie, and then take the next step. Because what often happens is people jump into it, have too much on their plate, and then nothing really gets done. Or it's not integrated enough and not aligned with what your goals are, and the campaign ends up falling flat. And it's really important to be consistent across all of your channels as you're starting to create and distribute this content to your audience. So let's get into some more of the specifics, developing an effective content strategy. So really, online, it comes down to this. You really want to align your strategies with whatever your goals are. So if you need revenue now, Google Ads and Facebook ads are the best possible thing you can do. Google Ads are great because if you're a registered 501c3, you get access to a $10,000 grant. It's free, you get it every month, and you can use it for all sorts of things. You can use it to generate revenue. You can use it to encourage volunteership. If you are an organization that relies on donations of physical goods or products, Google Ads can work as well. Facebook ads are interesting because there's a very low cost, so there's no real barrier to entry. For as little as $5 a day, you can get some really good results in terms of reach or engagement. They also have they're also a powerhouse when it comes to connecting the data that they house with a very specific audience. So if you go into Facebook Audience Insights, you can actually use their data, their live data, to create an audience group that's tailored to whatever your audience may like, or like a page, for example, or perhaps job titles. If you're trying to target specific people, maybe you're an environmental organization and you're targeting local educators in the area, targeting people with who like pages related to environment or have the job title of an educator. That's really, really effective. Boosting a post can be good at times, but I really encourage you to take a few steps more than that into actually creating the campaigns, because the boost posts are kind of low-hanging fruit. It's really easy to set up. $10 here, $20 there, it seems appealing, but it's not nearly as targeted as if you were to actually create a full ad campaign. I would say if you don't have in-house expertise, possibly think about outsourcing that. But honestly, it's pretty easy to learn. You can spend a little time on YouTube, maybe an hour or two to really get the gist of it. And then it's just starting to get into the platform and playing around with it. If, on the other hand, you do have resources, I really, really encourage that you bring your content together in video format, in audio format, and in written format, and then use all of your channels to promote that content. And the reason why I say all three of these mediums is because you want to give your audience the ability to consume content on their own terms. Not everyone is going to be able to not everyone's going to be able to understand the nuances of a conversation if you have a 2,000-word blog post. Maybe they consume the content better on video. I think audio is also really important because increasingly people are taking longer and longer commutes. And podcasting as a medium has just exploded over even the last year. I think the recent data suggests that some 43 million Americans tune into a podcast monthly. So this is where we start to get into the real detail of it all. So pillar content, as it says on the slide, is a centralized piece of content which generally covers a single topic and then is broken down into relevant subtopics. So as an example, the American Heart Association, a pillar piece of content might revolve around the topic of a healthy heart. Topic clusters go a little bit further down into and branches out into subtopics. So if you're looking in the example of a healthy heart, you might have topic clusters, and each one of those small circles might be an individual article. So for example, what vitamins should I take for a healthy heart? How to keep your heart healthy and strong? What effect does smoking have on a healthy heart? And really this plays great for search engines. Again, going back to Google and how people are searching for information online and how do they stumble and find you as they're researching or they're looking for causes to contribute to. But it also builds authority and trust in the communities you serve because it positions you as a thought leader in that space. The more information you talk about it, the more depth you can provide, it really goes a long ways in kind of showing that you have expertise and knowledge in those areas. Now, I found this picture, I think 2 or 3 days ago. It was really interesting, and I think it really captures the text well. I always wondered, how do they film all of these nature documentaries if there's a shark popping out of the water? How do they get these angles? The process really does matter. I cannot understate it enough. People want to see how you do the things you do. They're not just result oriented, or it's not just an emotional appeal. They want to see you go through the steps and kind of the behind the scenes. And it's okay if you're not perfect. You don't have to fear putting yourself out there. People actually respond better when you're not perfect because it shows an air of humanity. So I think the process is really important. And one thing that I did notice in terms of the fear, I was talking to a client of mine, and their hesitation with putting themselves out there is fear of backlash in terms of hate online. And really, my piece of advice, if that's the situation that you find yourself in, is to just be as cordial as you can be. Tell the person who's being hateful towards you that you're sorry that they don't see your perspective, and then just be done with it. Just ignore it. Don't worry about it. But really kind of think about how you can integrate that process into all of the content that you're creating, especially video, and especially if you can, really show that behind the scenes format. People respond very, very well to that. The other part of content is making sure that you can solve some type of pain point. So this is kind of an interesting story. When I first launched my website, a lot of the content that I was writing revolved around using data to support my claims, right? So I wanted to kind of show that online giving is on the rise, that people are being more willing to give and to contribute online. And I found myself using a lot of statistics, but the problem was sourcing that information was very difficult. I found that I would have to go across 15 different websites. I had bookmarks for days. The list just went down to the bottom of the screen. And it was kind of annoying. So what I ended up doing was I created a page that just centralized all of that information, has hundreds of statistics on it. And then I posted it online, and then I forgot about it, all but forgot about it. And then one day I was looking at some of the data, and I started to see people were linking to my site. Again, going back to the earned media, I was starting to get mentions online from really big organizations, Huffington Post, Business Insider, some education sites. And really, it was kind of a shock because I never thought in my mind that this would take off the way that it did, and I'm very thankful that it did. But it just kind of goes to show that you never know what is going to happen when you put yourself out there. And one of the things I had mentioned earlier about generating backlinks to your site is that you start to get a huge impact on ranking. This page ranks for, I think today I checked, it has some 1,200 different keywords that it ranks for, ranks on the first page for a couple hundred keywords. This page alone drives over 3,000 monthly search traffic to my site each month. So that's one aspect of it. It's bringing in relevant traffic to my site. Presumably people are interested in this. And I found that other people were linking out to it to support their own articles. So it solved a pain point for them. So it wasn't just me who was experiencing this issue of trying to source the correct information online, but other people were as well. And that's the theory that I have behind why so many people are linking to my page and why Google believes that it's relevant enough to rank for all of these pages. One other quick note about the importance of generating these backlinks: it just wasn't specific to this page. This page alone started to perform well, but other pages on my site started to perform well as well. And it's really because each page shares the link equity across all of the pages that it's linked to. So for example, this online giving statistics page is linked out to a number of other pages within my site internally. As a result, those pages started to climb in the rankings as well. And the website as a whole started to become more visible in the space based on the keywords that I'm targeting and a few other factors. So it's really important to note the importance of backlinks and how it can, again, lift your site in search results for Google. The other thing that's really important is to streamline your content creation. Finding the time to write, create, produce, and promote and engage with your audience on all of these different levels takes time. It's impossible to do and turn around a 3,000 word article in a week. I guess you could, but I mean, you're going to be taking a lot of time from other areas of your organization that you would rather be investing in. So this is an interesting graphic because it shows how you can repurpose a single piece of content and promote it across all of your different key channels. So for example, if I were to create this webinar, for example, might be a good take. I might then take this, throw it up on my site as a blog post. I would upload it to YouTube. I would then take a full transcript of this recording, throw it up online because that's how Google ranks websites. It looks for text. It's not quite sophisticated enough to read the actual video, but I have a feeling it's going to get there soon. And then I might try to repurpose it across all the different sites, as you can see here. And we'll touch upon the specifics of that in just a moment. But it really does help streamline the process when you're trying to get all of your content out there, especially if you're already resource constrained, or maybe you have you're one person in the office wearing multiple hats and marketing was just something that got bestowed to you. So just kind of think about different ways of how you can repurpose your content into all these different mediums specific to the platform. That leads us to promoting your content. So really when it comes down to it, you want to do what resources allow you to do. If you can do all of these things, if you can get invited to podcasts, if you can write a lot of guest posts, if you can connect with industry influencers, if you can do all of these things, that's great, but take it one step at a time again. Do what is available to you. And also try to get key stakeholders and staff involved as well, acting as brand ambassadors. Have them sharing out content. I know that recent research shows that donors actually want to see executive directors and presidents and CEOs and board members contributing to the conversation because they're often seen as thought leaders in the community. You can also involve your audience as well. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Alicia Patterson, who is a marketing specialist at UCCC, and they ran a year-end giving campaign last year, really leveraging Facebook for the first time. And what they did was they went out to their audience and they said, here's a template. Here's a template that you can use. Go ahead and take this template and just put it up on Facebook. Write your story. I think they were speaking specifically to, they're an education organization who help serve underprivileged youth to try and excel their education to get them placed into high schools and colleges. And what they did was they went out to those that benefited from their services, and they asked them to share their story. And they gave them this template and they said, here it is, and share your story. And I think at the end of it, all said and done, they not only reached their goal of $300,000 that year in year-end giving, but they surpassed it. So it just kind of shows you the power of that. And then the last part of it is the 80-20 rule applies. Again, don't get too caught up on creating content consistently, especially if you don't have an established audience. Chances are they're not reading it anyways. If, you have an audience of one, if you're still trying to build up. If you do have an audience, then consistency makes sense. But a lot of the times it comes down to 20% of your time should be dedicated to producing content, and the rest of that should be dedicating to get the word out and promoting it. And I'm going to show you specifically how I would approach it. So take a moment to just kind of look over a few of these different platforms. You might be familiar with some of the logos, but we're going to take it from the left-hand column, work our way down, starting with Facebook. So with Facebook, video works really, really well. And it doesn't have to be something that's overly produced. It does depend on your audience and that perception. But honestly, an iPhone with a stabilizer, it gets the job done. I mean, you don't have to worry about hiring an expensive production crew or anything like that. Facebook has a publishing tool, which is great because you can pre-schedule all of your posts. I've found that 2 to 3 times a week works pretty well. Whether you're trying to promote your content, maybe an event, 2 to 3 times a week works really well. If you have the ability and you're interested in kind of seeing what ads can do, try spending $5 a day. Just see what happens. I mean, you have absolutely nothing to lose except for your $5 a day, which that's pocket change. You can find that. And then again, I was talking about it earlier, building custom audiences. Facebook is really very intelligent, scary sometimes almost. You can put a Facebook pixel onto your website, it captures that information, and then you can go into custom audiences, custom Facebook audiences. If you Google that, that's one of the first page results. You can go there and you can actually create audiences based on pages that people view onto your site. And the way it works is it tries to connect that information that they have on that visitor with their data on their platform. And then when you create an ad, it tries to serve that ad to that individual. So you could say, for example, for anyone who lands on my homepage, or let's say my donation page, anyone who lands on my donation page but didn't give, I want to serve an ad to them. And maybe that ad is not necessarily a direct sell, but maybe it's a complimentary something that to fill a knowledge gap, or maybe it's something to address a pain point. Instagram works really well, 10 to 15 second videos, typically very emotionally driven. Hashtags are really big because that's people look for the conversation. If that's something that you're interested in investing in, then you can search top hashtags of the day, use them on your posts as long as it's relevant to the conversation to try and get some awareness there. And then connecting and direct messaging people in your audience. You can also do local targeting. If you serve a local community, you can, I'm in Bethesda, Maryland, so I might type in Bethesda, Maryland, and then find people there. Maybe do a few more searches and try and narrow down the audience a bit further and connect with them. Twitter, I find that 5 times a day works really well for me. 80-20 rule applies again. 80% of the time, it should be focused on someone else's content that's relevant to what you do. 20% of the time, it should be your content. Converting graphics and statistics into graphics is really good as well. I noticed a lot of infographics do very, very well in terms of reach. Twitter promote mode is relatively new, $100 a month. It helps to promote your content online and increase that reach past the audience that follows you. The next one is twitch.tv. It's a live streaming platform, and it's big in the gaming community, although it's spread out into different areas since then. It's since 2012, it's raised over $75 million for charities. Surveys of audience members say that 78% want to see more charity in gaming. You can have live engagement. You can have staff, present while you're hosting a virtual event or something, kind of engaging with people. I know Doctors Without Borders has been doing a virtual event for the last 7 years called Summer Games Done Quick. You can look that up. This year they raised $2.1 million in a week. So the platform is huge, and there are plenty of people that are on that platform making six figures. Sometimes, in some cases, if they're popular enough, they're making six figures a month. So it's a really, really interesting platform. And if you're interested in video and you're interested in live video, really do check that out. As I mentioned, kind of looking over here at podcasting, again, I said that 43 million monthly listeners. You can convert any type of video that you have into audio format. Again, it disseminates that information, and there's really no barrier to entry. You can get your iPhone, record, and be done with it, and then post it up online. And again, like, you can syndicate that across iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, all these different platforms. Your website is a central hub for all of your content. I truly believe that your website is the most valuable asset of any digital asset. Simply because you have 100% control over it. Again, link building, we talked about that earlier. And I think that bleeds into investing into search engine optimization. There's a lot of potential in that area, especially for nonprofits, at least according to the research that I've done. So take that with a grain of salt. It's starting to show signs of investments, particularly in the larger organizations, but it's starting to trickle down to the smaller ones. YouTube, mentioned earlier in the data from JumpShot, second largest search engine in the world. Video is an interesting medium because you can translate those complex ideas into 5 to 6 minute videos, whereas it might take a book to accurately explain all of that information. Again, iPhone plus a stabilizer is your camera crew. If you want to get a little bit more fancy with it, you can. Again, I would look to outsourcing that. You can probably do it for a couple $1,000s, I would say, is really what the threshold is. But there's actually, I came across something recently where an organization produced a $1,000 video. That was their budget, and it was actually phenomenal. So you find the right people, you can do a lot. And then another thing, the last one here is Medium. You can actually import your written posts into Medium, and what it says there, the canonical tag, that's an SEO term, so that you don't have duplicate content issues that would plummet your rankings. And then there's also LinkedIn's publishing tool. So there's a lot of different things you can do. You just got to get your word out there. So now I want to talk about growing a niche-focused email list and how I built the audience that I have today. The content upgrade is a really interesting one. It was coined by Brian Dean of Backlinko. He's an expert SEO, and he came up with this concept where if you have a long-form blog post and you offer something that's not available in that post as a download, people are willing to give up their email for it. So what kind of content should it be? Well, I think it should be something that provides additional value to your audience in the form of either what I have here is a free template. It's a 130-page document. It goes into excruciating detail of how to formulate a marketing plan. It's the playbook I use. It's a little bit of a snore fest, but it is something that that really does work if you want to put the time into it. And the graph to the right there is my actual email growth over time. As you can see, it took a year to really start to ramp up. But over time, if you give it the time and you nurture it and you give the right offer, it really does work. And try and play around with it. I've played with a few different offers, and I find that a template works really well for my audience. Just test it and see what happens. To that point, so I use WordPress as my content management system. I use Thrive Leads, which then connects to MailChimp. It's just a way for me to create those call to actions and then connect it through APIs, integrations to MailChimp. And what I found is that the content upgrade converts 10% of the time, whereas my newsletter offer hardly converts at all. A little bit of food for thought. For me personally, I don't sign up for newsletters anymore. Most of them don't really offer anything of value. Radiolab is one exception. If you're interested in listening to a podcast, I highly recommend them. But it just kind of goes to show that the content upgrade theory does work. How do you connect with people online to build that niche audience? One of the things that I started doing, I invested into Twitter. So you can go to search.twitter.com. And then you'll have this little screen appear here with a little bar, and then type in keywords that are relevant to your audience. So for me, nonprofit marketing, it's one of them. And then follow each single person there. If you can offer additional value, if they allow you to direct message them without being a follower, maybe reach out and say, hey, how can I help you? But really what you're trying to do is connect with like-minded people who would be willing enough to maybe donate their time through volunteership or monetarily. You want to build a very niche focused audience because it's easier to sell to, quite honestly, than it is trying to market to the general public, because the hope is that you're speaking to their specific needs, again, on their own terms. I find that it works exceptionally well on LinkedIn as well. And the great thing about LinkedIn is when you go to connect with someone, you have the option to give them a message before you connect with them, make it super personal, make it very customizable, and again, speak to their needs. And I think you only have 150 characters, but try and prove your value proposition to them, why it would be worth connecting with them in that time and moment. Track and measure your progress across your digital campaigns. I've talked about a lot of different things that you can do. And it may not seem like there's purpose behind it, but throwing spaghetti at the wall really does work. And really it comes down to, how do you know what will work until you try it out? And the idea is, start to weed out the underperformers. Identify the areas and the channels that start to gain traction, then dump the underperformers, double down your investments on the winners, and then once you start to see a particular platform start to plateau in growth, move on to the next one, and then see if you can build and develop that niche audience on the next platform. This is actual traffic data. So Google Analytics and Google Search Traffic, or Google Search Console, are free tools. They're offered by Google. Very easy to set up on your website. Just a little bit of tracking code. So the top is actual performance of my website. 6,000 monthly visitors last month. And then Google Search Console, those are some actual impressions and clicks within the last 7 days, queries that people have clicked onto to view my website. And we can really dive into the specifics of it, but leverage this data the best you can. So specifically looking at Google Analytics, bounce rate, page average time spent on page, kind of give you an idea of whether or not someone enjoyed your content and whether it was relevant enough to them or not. You can also put on heat and click maps or session recorders. Hotjar is one that I've used. You can see how people engage with your content, either through clicks or an actual recorded session. How did they navigate through your page? That's a really interesting one. UTM Builders is a really interesting one as well. You can track and identify exactly where your conversions are coming from what campaign, definitely look at it. In Google Analytics, you can go to acquisition, overview, referral, and you can dive into where is that traffic coming from and how am I converting that. I think that's it. That was a bit of a quick one, but I hope there was some value there for you guys.